Hello everybody, this is Pitch Skull Black here and welcome back to another Doctor Who DVD review for my 10th anniversary, in which today I am going to be reviewing the Aztecs. So without further ado, let us begin this review video. So for the cover art we have BBC Doctor Who The Aztecs Special Edition, 2-disc set, PG DVD video. Then we have the William Hartnell years 1963 to 66 with a picture of the man himself there. Then we have Barbara in disguise as Yetaxa, the Aztec goddess. I'll get into that in a bit if you haven't seen this story. Then we have the First Doctor, probably thinking about Kameka. Again, I'll get into that in a bit. And then we have the very creepy character Toloxol the Butcher. And this is all kind of background by a very nice kind of orange hue rendition of the Aztec city / civilization. And for the spine, we have some DVD bits and pieces at the top. Doctor Who, picture of William Hartnell. The Aztecs Special Edition, PG and BBC. And then we have the back of this release of various pictures from the story. Doctor Who, starring William Hartnell. The Aztecs Special Edition by John Lucarotti. Then we've got the special features. And then we've got various other bits and pieces down here, such as the runtime, which is 99 minutes. PG contains mild language, threat, violence, and a drug reference. The TARDIS materializes in Mexico in the 15th century, where the Doctor and his companions soon discover that it is a bloodthirsty and dangerous place. With Barbara mistaken for a reincarnation of an Aztec high priest called Yetaxa, she thinks that she can put an end to the barbaric human sacrifices once and for all. But can she rewrite history without disastrous consequences? And then we have the interior. We have disc 1 and disc 2. And then we've got the chapter points for the 4 episodes that this story comprises of. And we've got the front of the booklet. And then we've got the interior of it, detailing the special features and what have you. As you might be able to tell, this was not the first time that the Aztecs got a release on DVD, with this being the second. As for the original one, it was rated a U instead of a PG, as you can see, and the cover art had Ian in disguise because, I guess you could say minor spoiler alert, but it's not really a spoiler alert, it depends how you look at it, but he has to help the Aztecs with the sacrifice at one point in the story, with Toloxol the Butcher in the background there, and then Barbara or Jacqueline Hill as Yetaxa there. That's what the spine of this release looked like, and then that's what the back of it looks like. And there is the interior of it. The pure historical stories of 1960s Doctor Who are a curious anomaly of the production intentions of the show. Something that you'd be hard pressed to find these days, but something that makes this era all the more interesting. These types of stories were eventually phased out in favour of solely dedicating the show to sci-fi in season 4, and whereas I do think The Highlanders is a pretty solid story, it and The Smugglers definitely weren't at the heights of these stories' quality, and not a great ending for them originally. Although I would say that the one after, with Black Orchid quite a bit later in season 19, is fantastic. The Aztecs was the second story of this type and was one of 3 to feature in season 1, that is if you don't count the last 3 episodes of An Unearthly Child, with it being sandwiched in between the epic Marco Polo and the series finale The Reign of Terror. As well as this, I would say that this is probably the show's most popular historical story, which is probably held because of the fact that all of its episodes exist. Whereas I would say that the historicals can be a bit of a mixed bag in areas, they can be some of the very best of the First Doctor era, particularly Marco Polo, the Crusade, and the Aztecs. As well as this, the one I'm talking about here today is the best place to start with them, although I would say watch the Time Meddler beforehand to acclimate oneself with a historical setting. Afterwards, it would be a bit difficult for me to say as to where to go with them next, as many of the good ones are unfortunately incomplete or completely missing from the archives. However, if you're a fan of comedic stories, the Romans and the gunfighters may be good ones to check out. Personally, I currently don't find these two historicals to fit my own tastes. However, I do know of people that enjoy the more comedic stories of the show and enjoy these existent four-parters. The latter of these two has a very divided reception, but, as I said, you may get something out of it if you're a fan of comedic stories. The Crusade I would also recommend trying if you have the Season 2 Blu-ray set, but keep in mind that 2 of its episodes are missing and photographically reconstructed, being the 2nd and 4th. John Lucarotti returns to the show here after penning the loved, albeit challenging for newcomers, Marco Polo. He would then continue to write historicals afterwards with The Massacre in Season 3, and would later write the original version of the 4th Doctor story, The Ark in Space, which did not see the light of day until 2023 with Big Finish and their Lost Stories range, the earlier iteration that is. Proving that their ability to write powerful historicals was not a fluke, Lucarotti ended up writing what I would call somewhat of a crescendo of the first season of the show during production of Marco. In that story, he had a really good grasp of the main TARDIS crew and was able to write them really well, particularly with Susan. Personally, I feel that somehow he delivers them even better here, even though that one mentioned doesn't get as big of a spotlight. From what I can remember about that 7-parter, the writer seems to have learnt a lot about the main 4 and has been able to weave a story that has very well utilised and implemented all of them, that in turn draws up on John's own apparent fascination and research on the Aztec civilization. Marco Polo was obviously a great story, both in general and for the TARDIS crew, but to my recollection, the Aztec simply uses them better generally. The story credits David Whittaker as script editor, which makes me wonder if Lucarotti had help from them with the characters, as the former wrote the earlier on The Edge of Destruction, which to me is a good character study that tests the main 4 after the events of the first 2 stories and kind of prepares them for Marco Polo, which would have been up next. The story's main drive with regards to the characters is Barbara, who gets mistaken for the reincarnation of a goddess called Yetaxa after being found by High Priest Ortlock wearing a bracelet symbolically connected with the divine figure. It is through this companion that the science fiction idea of rewriting history creeps into an otherwise pure historical. Hence my recommendation of going into this story after having watched The Time Meddler for starters of the era, with her being forced to assume role as Yetaxa and having to partake in many of the Aztec customs that the serial shows her being uncomfortable with throughout the runtime. It is also through her being mistook as the goddess that many great moments of characterization happen between her and William Hartnell's incarnation of the Doctor. It is greatly utilized here the fact that Barbara is a history teacher and that the Time Lord has travelled and gathered knowledge for many years throughout time and space, to create some brilliant moments between the two, such as the Doctor scolding her for not doing certain things as her role, and the now iconic quote, "You can't rewrite history, not one line." There's also the point made at the start of episode 1 that a speciality of Barbara's teaching was on the Aztec culture, which makes me wonder if this was a sneaky thing put in by John, as they were apparently fascinated by the same civilization. It is also thanks to this character dilemma that the very dark and serious elements of the story creep in and are displayed, with the human sacrifices and general culture being described in a very unflinching and gritty way. The very creepy character of Tloxol the Butcher helps transmit several of these notions as well, with them having a very unrelenting aura in regards to their job and what they say and do. It is definitely not the darkest story that the First Doctor era produced, but I would argue that it is perhaps the darkest to be in full existence. And it also shows signs of where the writer would go next in Doctor Who, with Season 3's harrowing four-parter, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. The Doctor, I've already described the majority of my feelings on the character in this story, and in turn how well he is utilised and shown. But he also does get some lighter moments in this story, such as him flirting with Kameka, should you need some levity in this story. Susan very much follows a similar pattern with Barbara, with her being taken away to a school-like area of the settlement and made to study. Over the runtime, she also grows tired and disgusted with the traditions and happenings. Ian is another particular highlight in the story, with him being made and trained as a warrior, which seems to be a characterial predecessor to him being knighted in the Crusade. The story ends up pairing him with a good original character called Ixta, who trains him and even partakes in combat between the two. With excellent production values and performances, this overall is simply an incredible First Doctor adventure, and it very easily ranks among his best. For me, you can't really get much better than the three historicals displayed on screen. My rating for the Aztecs is a 9.5 out of 10. As you might be able to tell, this was not the first time that the Aztecs got a release on DVD, with this being the second, and it's a bit of an odd release in my opinion, this particular one. As for the original one, it was rated a U instead of a PG, as you can see, and the cover art had Ian in disguise because, I guess you could say minor spoiler alert, but it's not really a spoiler alert, it depends how you look at it, but he has to help the Aztecs with the sacrifice at one point in the story, with Tloxol the Butcher in the background there, and then Barbara or Jacqueline Hill as Yataxa there. And as you can see, my copy is signed by Carol Ann Ford and Ian Cullen, who played Ixta in the story. That's what the spine of this release looked like. And then that's what the back of it looks like. And there is the interior of it. No booklet in this, so perhaps this one didn't come with one originally, but still really cool kind of signed item in my collection, particularly since Ian Cullen has unfortunately passed away. But back to the Aztecs special edition. So, this was released in 2013 as a special edition, with the original being released all the way back in 2002. And as I said, this is a weird one, particularly with the special features. So, the first really weird one here I would like to point out is A Whole Scene Going, an interview with director Gordon Fleming and a look at filming of his film Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. Now, I get that this is a First Doctor story, and that was an adaptation of a First Doctor story, and this came out in the year of the 50th anniversary, but it still is a bit weird to me having a special feature like that about the Daleks on this pure historical story. Like, I can kind of get why they did it, but at the same time it's pretty strange. And what's even stranger is Galaxy 4 is shoved into this for some reason. Basically back in 2011, A Private Collector Returned, The Underwater Menace Episode 2, and Galaxy 4 Episode 3 Airlock. So BBC were clearly struggling in terms of thinking of how they could release these particular episodes, and it tells with the whole shit show that the release of The Underwater Menace turned out to be. But before they got Galaxy 4 animated, with the surviving episode presented on Blu-ray and DVD a bit later on, they for some reason decided to present Galaxy 4 in this DVD. Okay, a little odd, but at least you're getting the surviving episode, right? Well, that is true, you do get the surviving episode. However, the way they present it is chronologically within a reconstruction of Galaxy 4. Cool, right? Well, no. For some reason, it is a rapidly cut down version of Galaxy 4. Down to about 66 minutes instead of the full 100. Now, I know they did that before with them having a 45-minute reconstruction of Marco Polo on the Edge of Destruction DVD, but still, it is so strange.